Good morning, everyone. I think we're live. Welcome to this replay about maintaining your memory improvement habit. Appreciate everyone who hits that thumbs up button and leaves a comment below. If you're watching the replay, definitely make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you're not already, and get involved with some questions or comments if you have any. So, just as a little update here, this is a very interesting book. If you can get hold of it, definitely do. I've only read a little bit of it so far, but really enjoying it and learning a lot about that particular period of history, which is going to help supplement this book, which is On the Shadows of the Ideas by Bruno, and the course that I'm putting around that. So in terms of making sure that we can develop a memory improvement practice and then maintain it, make it a habit, make it work every day, just hit that thumbs up. If you're joining us live, let me know where you are in the world. And it really starts with making a commitment to actually improve your memory and being all in and understanding that it's something that you do for life. Some things come into your life, for a reason or for a season, but there are other things that come into your life for life, and memory is one of those things. We evolved as humans to have memory in order to have a survival advantage and to grow over time. And in order to really make the most out of our memory, we have to stick with it. We have to use it. We have to maintain it. We have to grow it. We have to challenge it. We have to enable it to have a upward arc. Even though nothing ever goes like this, it's always like this, right? So you'll always plateau and you'll always have challenges. And then when you have challenges, you need to think about what you're going to do to navigate those challenges. Julie's here from California. Hi, Julie. Thanks for saying hello. Always good to see your name. And we're talking about memory habits and maintaining them. So if you're joining us now, let me know where you are in the world. Hit that thumbs up. And if you have questions, we can do a little bit of Q&A. Got a kind of a time deadline here this morning, but really looking forward to a great session. And obviously these things are a lot better with interactivity and your participation, and we can do a little bit of mailbag as well, because I got some very interesting emails that have gathered up over the past week or so as I've been away. In any case, the thing about memory improvement is to just be in it for life, because you're going to have your memory for life. If that makes sense to you, let me know in the chat, and if it doesn't, then I'll wonder if you're actually a living, breathing entity, because it's just a simple equation that memory is going to be with you for life, unless of course it gets damaged or some sort of disease, starts to creep in, and that can be a terrible, terrible thing. Alden's here from Croatia. Thanks for saying hello. Really appreciate it. Nice to make your acquaintance today, and let me know what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what's up with your memory. Do you have a memory improvement habit that you follow at the moment? And if not, why not? And would you like one? Because there's some simple things you can do. But it all begins with being committed. Being committed to show up to the art and the craft and the science of memory. And what does that mean, art, craft, and science of memory? Well, part of what it means is that because it's an art, there's no right or wrong. So, for example, I'm just drawing some stuff, and there's no right or wrong. I mean, has zero market value, but it's just something that I enjoyed, sort of thinking about the complexity of life and how that there's still things that come together and merge even as they're separating and blah, blah, blah. But there's no right or wrong to it. It's art, it's expression, and the world will decide if it likes it or not. Doesn't really matter, because I liked it, I enjoyed it. It was a way of getting my mind off certain things. So that's an art. And in your mind, when you're using memory techniques, you have an artistic sensibility to it because you're creating based on existing elements. So you're using things that you already know. You're using the world for memory palaces. You're using pop culture for bridging figures. You're using anything that you already know to create associations and establish connections with things that you don't know, but that you do want to know. And there's no right or wrong at some level, because that's just a process of exploring and seeing what works, and you get better at it over time. And just like with making some art, sometimes you just will be a little bit less than what you would like because of all the conditions that are going on, and you might think, oh well, I should have chosen this color instead of that color, and so forth. So there's a kind of thing there that's artistic, and there's no getting away from that, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's actually a very, very powerful part of it. but you just don't judge. You just create. It's just about creation. And the more that you plan, the more your creation is going to come out in a particular way relative to an outcome. And we'll talk about outcomes as being very important to maintaining your memory palace habits. But the general issue is that you've got to think about it artistically, and you need to have an artistic sensibility, even if you're not an artist. And you don't have to be an artist, but just understand that there's artistry to it and there's craft to it. And what does craft mean? Why is that different than artistry? Well, crafting has to do with paying attention to the little details, right? And making sure that things are in the right place or in the optimal place, and understanding that you can improve that over time in terms of the actual fitting, the engineering. Because there are laws of physics and laws of chemistry in the brain relative to how information enters the eye, and then what happens when your brain starts to scatter shot that information all throughout the chemistry inside of your skull. And you can actually optimize that with craft, like craftsmanship, and you can understand what's going on at the level of craft. And then you craft the experience in advance so that you're prepared to do the artistic element with the eye of the craftsperson and with craftsmanship. And this is very, very powerful to understand and to get that. So if there are questions about this, let me know in the chat below. And if you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world and what's going on with your memory, and if you have a memory improvement habit already on the go, and if not, why not? And let's get that started for you, because it's really, really profound and powerful what it does for you. So that's a little bit of, there's lots more to say about the craftsmanship element there, but that's part of it. It's really understanding what your memory is and how it works, and understanding these techniques and continuing to study them and continuing to improve with them and continuing to just fall in love with your memory, because it's yours and you can understand it in very, very detailed ways how it works, so that when you do show up to the artist element, then you can do it with greater craft in your approach. And if you want to extend that metaphor, it's kind of like studying color theory, for example, and understanding more about which colors go together better, and understanding more about why you might want this color in this place instead of that place, right? Because you are trying to create effects and so forth. Really, really important to think of the craftsmanship element. And we got a question from Alden, and we'll get to that, but I just want to cover the science element here. And what do I mean by science? Well, science, first of all, is the creation of evidence that supports claims. That's basically what science is. So people are skeptical about science, and they're like, oh, scientists are liars, and scientists, abuse data in the pharmaceutical companies, and yada, 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 yada. Well, those are humans, right? But science is something that's pretty much perfect, because it's just a way that guides how that we create and present evidence in support of claims. And if the evidence doesn't support the claim, then science works to make sure that it's making better claims about the universe, and or finding better evidence that supports the claims, so that we get clearer and clearer descriptions of what's going on in the world that help us make predictions, so that our actions are stronger, better, more purposeful, more guided, more refined, more craftsmanship, more artistry is able to come to the fore to help us. But we need the presentation of evidence that supports the claims. So how does that relate to memory practice and your memory habit? Well, the claim is that if you would just create a simple memory palace and then want to memorize 10 words, for example, you should be able to do that within 15 to 20 minutes or so, with maybe 98% recall, if you just put in a bit of practice, right? That's a claim. And so what do we need to do in order to be scientific about it? Well, we then need to look at the guidelines of what's presented here in terms of memory palace creation, and how we're going to create magnetic imagery at every magnetic station in the memory palace. And then we're going to need to do some of the things like the principle of preparation and the principle of predetermination and so forth. It's all taught in the magnetic memory method. And then we're going to create the evidence that in support of the claim, right? And you're the scientist in the laboratory of your own mind. No one else can do this for you. The science is there. The evidence is there. You can look at the World Memory Championship records. You can look at the memory science. If you're a skeptic of it, that's great. But be a true skeptic and do the work of trying to prove it wrong if you don't believe it. How do you do it? You create memory palaces. You have a goal that you have some information you want to memorize, and then just do what the instructions say. You'll be very, very unique person if you can prove this wrong, right? But that's the scientific element, is that you run the experiment. The experiments have been going for thousands of years, and they work. And the question really is, what are you going to do to get them to work for you? Are you going to be the scientist who puts on the laboratory jacket, gets into the laboratory of your mind, and produces the evidence that confirms the claim? And then once you have 10 words, let's say, in a memory palace, then you can change the claim scientifically and say, okay, well, I did 10 words, let's do 20, right? And then you set up the experiment, you run the experiment, and then you look at the results. And then very scientifically, you look at the results and you process the data a little bit and you say, yeah, okay, so that was 98% in memory palace 1 recall. I'd like to push to 100. So what do I need to do in my scientific process here in order to really, really get to 100%, right? And so that's the scientific element, is what is it that needs to be done differently? How do we change things, and why do we change them? And then how are we going to study this all along? And so the study involves actually tracking what you're doing. That's why I always teach, have a memory journal, a memory palace journal, and you're able to write out all this stuff and actually look back and track your progress and make better scientific decisions, because you're like, okay, on Tuesday I had 10 words, but it was 95% instead of 98%. What's going on here? If you don't have the data, then you can't really be scientific about it, and you can't scientifically improve over time. So you need to have these things in place. It's really, really important. So art, science, craft, you get all those three things going together, and you're going to be a master of your memory inside of a week, right? And you just got to take it one sip at a time, which means study the techniques, which is the S, and implement the techniques, which is the I, and then practice the techniques with information that's going to improve your life. So what does that mean? Well, that means making sure that not shopping lists unless it's in a foreign language that you want to learn and it'll improve your life to know the words of those foods. It means not random digits from here to eternity because you read it in a book about memory champions, unless those numbers are going to improve your life. And it just means information that's actually going to make you better at your job tomorrow, boost your fluency in the language you're learning by the end of the day, and so on. Every person, if they really think about it, they can nail something that if they just had that information in their mind, it would improve their life. The names of the people you work with on a day-to-day basis, if you're in sales or whatever, work on that. Study the techniques, implement the techniques, and practice them with the information that's going to improve your life. You'll have victory day after day after day. It'll boost your confidence. It'll boost your courage. It'll boost everything, and you will move forward so fast if you just get the art and the science and the craft going. But you need to have habits, and you need to maintain those habits. So that's what we're talking about today. I got some chats here to get caught up with. Woo, out of breath with that big speech. But that's the core of all this stuff. So we're going to catch up with some of these chats and questions. But if you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the comments where you are in the world and how you're feeling today. So Alden from Croatia says, I was wondering if I need to use memory palaces for remembering something not so big. For example, if I want to remember some song lyrics that is irrelevant, like why would I want to use a whole memory palace just for that? All right, Alden, great question. Why would you want to use a memory palace just for that? Let's look at that first, because this is part of our habit maintenance, right? Is having a why, right? And but before we even have the why, we want to have what's the outcome that we want, right? So song lyrics, I memorize song lyrics, and I always think, well, what's the outcome? Why this song instead of some other song? Or why this song instead of a poem? Or why this song instead of some whatever, right? So what's the outcome that I want? And recently I memorized some lyrics from Lou Reed, right? A song called My House. And I needed to think just very quickly, what do I want the outcome here to be? Well, I was reading, I think it was Anthony de Curtis's biography of Lou Reed, and I just wanted to go through his music and also be a little bit more connected to my favorite song by Lou Reed, which is My House. And I think that's what it's called. That'd be strange, but the thing is that the lyrics change. At the end, he says, our house. So there's like a transformation throughout the lyrics, and it kind of throws the mind. And that's one of the cool things about memory techniques, is that you can then think of scientifically. If you've been following us all along, you would know the scientific principle, but if not, you can go watch the replay later. Is well, what was it? What was it? And you can test yourself and think, and then go, okay, so I made a flub there. Well, why, right? And think about that. But I'm pretty sure it's called My House. But in any case, the thing is that the outcome is that I wanted to be able to sing that song, play guitar, be more connected to the book on Lou Reed that I was reading, and I wanted to be able to actually really open up connections so that I remembered more of the book. I remembered more of Lou Reed's particular artistry, because there's something in memorizing stuff like lyrics that brings you closer to contemplation outcomes. You can't really contemplate the meaning of things if you don't have them in your memory in quite the same way. If you're always looking at it in the page, or you always have to listen to the song from beginning to end, you don't see the same sort of artistry. You don't see the same sort of depth of thought and mastery unless you have it in your mind, and that's true of poetry and so forth. So that's the outcome. Now, in terms of Alden's question about a memory palace just for that, there's a concept in the magnetic memory method which is called memory palace scarcity, and that's the worry that any memory palace would ever be wasted on something. No memory palace is ever wasted on anything, and it's never just for that. Oh, I used a memory palace just for that. We think the opposite. We have abundance mindset of memory palaces. We can reuse the memory palaces as many times as we want, provided that we are practicing the magnetic memory method principles of continually practicing for that outcome. And we're always adding new memory palaces because we're extending our spatial memory so that we have endless feeling inside of ourselves of certainty and confidence that we have all the material that we need to work with. We have all the space in the universe to work with, constantly expanding because we're paying attention to space and we're using it for our memory. So it's never just for that. It's precisely for that purpose that we always are prepared with memory palaces, because we just want to be able to use what memory palaces can do for us, which is speed of acquisition, speed of depth of understanding, and speed of recall rehearsal that gets it into long-term memory, so that you never have to sit around repeating and repeating and repeating more times than necessary. Memory palaces and memory itself is about repetition, but how can you maximize the process? How can you really, really refine it and streamline it so that those repetitions move from repetitions of repetition for memorization, but rather repetition for pleasure from mastery, right? So that when you sit down and you got a guitar and you want to play that song, or you just want to sing it in the shower, or you want to sing it for your friends or whatever, it just comes, because that's a different level of repetition. That's now repetition from knowledge, from the heart, from the soul, from the body, from the mind, from intelligence, from knowledge, right? So that's the kind of experience that you're looking for, and it's really, really important. So I hope that helps answer your question, Alden, but it's precisely for for the memory palace that we want this, and so that we understand memory palaces better, and that we just get the most out of our memory for life. Let's see here. Deck was here. Oh, so good to see you always. Oh, it's been a while. Glad to meet with you. Sandra's here. Greetings from Northern California. Hope April's doing well. Yes, she is. She's home. So glad about that. Thank you for everybody who's emailed about that. Julie says, I'm feeling a bit stuck right now in my memory practice. I've fallen out of my daily practice, and even though I'm always inspired by your videos, I'm not carrying that over to energize my practice. Okay, well, let's talk about that, Julie. The thing that I'm sort of getting to here in this memory palace maintenance thing is you always want to think about your outcome, right? Think about the outcome that you want. So if your daily practice is faltering, what was the outcome that you wanted when you started daily practice, right? And the more that you get out your memory journal and you write that down, then the more it's going to help you. Because to be fair, sometimes picking up a deck of cards, you can just think, well, yeah, why? Why do this, you know? And if you don't have your outcomes in line, then it can be a bit laborious. There's no doubt about it. But when I remind myself that I want to be able to walk into a room and memorize every single name in that room, like I did a couple days ago, well, then that's part of my outcome. I want that skill, and I want it to be flawless. I want it to be effortless. I want it to be fun. I want it to just roll off the top of my head. And how am I going to do that? Well, the how is to practice, and then the cards are very different, right? And so It's something like that, is just constantly having your outcome in mind. And it sounds self-helpy and so forth, but it will help yourself. So who cares if it sounds self-helpy or not? You want to really, really align yourself with the outcomes that you want. Then the small little operations, they don't seem so big, so challenging, uh, so repetitive, so boring, and so forth like that. And it doesn't have to be playing cards. I have other cards. I have other cards like this, right? That just have numbers on them, for example. Or I can just be working on Chinese, or I can get cards and put names on them. I have cards with rappers on them, the names of rappers. Then I can add their details and so forth, and it's all for the outcome of being able to remember names and to be able to remember the Chinese things that I learned from my wife, just as we go along through life, that expand my vocabulary, expand my phrases, expand my ability to communicate over time, and to be able to get it down so that I'm remembering what those words were with just a little bit of repetition and not just not overkill repetition. Is it's from the practice. It's from the continually showing up, right? So it's really, really important to have that outcome, and I always remind myself of that because I want to be able to rapidly accelerate through the information and to just have that skill. And it's not about perfection memory. There's no such thing as perfect memory, right? There's going to be little things. There was a when I was at this business meeting the other day, there was someone, and I'm a partially deaf in one of my ears, and I didn't hear him say his full name. I just heard a sort of Dara sound, and so saw Daredevil in a fist fight over his head, and I just thought, I'm not really feeling too confident about that, but that's what I got. So I got to go with it, right? And because honesty and truth are one of the highest values of the magnetic memory method, I just told him. I said, all I heard was Dara, and I'm not sure that that was exactly correct. And he said, Darren. And I said, okay, good. So now I can put on Darren Brown fighting with the Daredevil. And I told him too that I was kind of thinking it was Daryl, and then that can now create some sort of thing where, well, now was it Darren, was it Daryl, or so forth. So I've got to kind of configure for that. But it's not, and it's what I said at this meeting, and everybody was incidentally blown away by this because I asked them after I recited all their names going around in the circle. I said, can anyone else here do that? And no one could. And I said, there's no fundamental difference between you and me. The reason that I can do that is simply because I study the techniques, I implement the techniques, and I practice the techniques with information that improves my life. And that's all you have to do as well in order to be able to do that and show up to it, maintain the practice, and have your outcome in place always. What is it that you want? That's the one thing that I want. But I told them something else, and I think it'll help you as well, is that I have a deep worrisome fear of having problems with my brain later in my life. And there's a couple of reasons why. One of which is that I took a lot of drugs when I was a teenager, and I drank a lot up until my late 30s, really. So who knows what's coming because of that, right? The other thing is I took a lot of psychopharmaceutical medicine for depression and manic depression, and who knows what's coming as a consequence of that. And the other thing is that there's some indications in some members of my family that, so like I worry about these things, and so I practice my memory, and my outcome is I want a healthy brain when I'm 150. And you might be thinking, no, you're not going to live to your 150, but we don't know, right? And all these people, they're constantly, you do these surveys, how long do you think you're going to live? And they say, well, 75, 78, whatever, the standard thing. And lo and behold, that's when they die. I'm kind of curious to see what happens if I just put in my mind that I'm going to live till 150. But I don't want to live to 150 if my brain isn't sharp as it is right now. And in fact, I have a real good reason to believe that it can actually get sharper over time, if only in particular ways. But my outcome is that I want to be sharp as a whistle when I'm as old as I get. And I want it to get better and better and better and better over time, right? And better is something that scientifically can be determined over time and redefined again and again and again when you have that scientific mindset that science is the presentation of evidence that supports a claim. And so, and even just in the last couple of years, my whole idea of what memory and what good memory is for me personally has shifted. And because of that reassignment of value and really, really digging in, it's enabled me to enjoy it so much better. And then technically, in terms of the presentation of the actual numbers of what is possible to do, that gets better as well. So the science part is really important. So I hope that helps answer some of the question, because there's a bit more, but you first want to focus just on the outcomes, and that'll help guide your practice. Um, and Julie says, yes, I remember why I'm doing this rather than focused on the minutia, the why. Yes, well, the why is maybe a little bit different than the outcome, but they're related. So yes, it is the why. And the reason why I say outcome and why are different is because outcome is total mental health, right? Total mental mastery, total memory clarity, total knowledge. And I don't know the why because I haven't lived until that time, you know? But the why that I do know is because I have my own personal feeling of consistency and confidence and courage and basically mental control that I want and that I want other people to have. But also because in order to teach these skills and inspire people and motivate them, the why is that I have to be able to do it, and I have to be able to create an authentic picture based from doing, because there's so many memory instructors out there who don't use these techniques. They just read about them in a book and they teach them, or they don't use them for real learning goals. They maybe use them for other things or just very tiny little things. And you know, if you live in this world long enough at the professional level as a teacher, you'll be pretty amazed by how some of the people you meet really don't walk their talk, and it's, you know, it's a little bit disappointing and so forth. But that's the world. That's the nature of the world. But I don't want to be that person, and I only present the things that I actually can do and have done and will do in the future. And so that's part of my why. My why is in the here and now to be able to teach you these things from an authentic place, from the actual practice and the knowledge that I have. And when I don't know things, I'm very forthright. I just don't know. And I will tell you that. And I continue to study. So part of my why is, and this is why it's different than outcome, the why is to be prepared to be able to tell you about the books that I'm reading, like On the Shadows of the Ideas, right? Why? Because I think it's useful for you. I just got an email that I was going to go through later about a particular competitor who bases their training on Bruno to a certain extent. And I want to be able to, before I say anything about that, I want to know Bruno inside and out, and in addition to that training, so that when I'm educating people about it, I'm actually able to speak intelligently instead of speculating and so forth. And that's part of my why, is to always be the best possible instructor I can be in this space, and the most honest one, which is why I'm reading this book as well, to help do that. So that's why is a little bit different than outcome. I'd say why is more here and now. Outcome is, you know, here and now plus the unknowns of the future, if that helps in any way. And I think it does, if you really understand that distinction. That's important. So we'll truck on further, but that's part of how you maintain daily memory practice or near daily memory practice, and it's really, really important to have these things in place. So if we're going to get through some more chats here. If you are joining us on the live and you haven't said hello, just type in a hello where you are in the world, hit the thumbs up, and if you have questions, pop them in. Alden says, that answered my question. Thank you so much. Perfect. Really glad. Grim Rank is here. All right. Good to see you. Anthony, trying to remember a deck of cards, develop memory palace, image, but slow recall. Okay. That's good to know that you're doing this and you're experienced. Do you have a specific question around it? If so, let me know what that question is. In terms of slow recall, I understand that it can be frustrating for people that want to be able to go fast. You know, who doesn't? It's just a normal thing. You want it now, right? You buy a Ferrari, you want to get it on the street, and you want to go as fast as that sucker goes. But there are laws of physics, there are laws of experience, there are laws of the country, for example, that you're in, and there are certain areas where you're only allowed to drive that fast. And even then, do you really want to be driving that fast? Because you haven't practiced with the Ferrari yet, you might crash it, right? So there's different things to consider as you go through this. Before you get frustrated, before you talk yourself out of your forward progress and all that jazz, just try to think of, where am I at right now? What have I done? And congratulate yourself for it. So here's one thing about daily practice, and I have to do this sometimes myself a lot, because, you know, it's just, It's just the way the world is, you know? Sometimes you just don't feel like doing the stuff that you need to be doing. But one trick that you can do when it comes to cards or anything, Chinese or whatever, is just take the first action. Take the first action. So you opened up the deck of cards. I did it. Congratulate yourself for that. It sounds like a small thing, but it's like, I'm there. Now all I have to do is start looking at the cards, right? And I'm like, okay, this is the fat lady that sings. It's a more specific fat lady, but if she's watching, I don't want to embarrass her. But anyway, this is the fat lady that sings. And now this is the nose of Michelangelo's station, right? And then before you know it, I'm like, oh, wow, I remember why this is so fun. I'm glad that I got the cards out of the deck because if I couldn't have motivated myself to do that, I'd be missing out on all this fun because now the fat lady's in a fist fight with Michelangelo's David's nose, you know? And you just go from there. And so sometimes it's these little micro steps. And this is where the how comes in. This is where the how comes in, which is the sort of third part. So you've got your outcome, you've got your why you're doing it in the here and now, and then you've got the actual steps, right? And when you know what those steps are that you need to follow, then if you can just get yourself to do that one first thing, like pulling the practice materials out of the deck, whatever it is, whether it's this, or maybe it's your foreign language book, or heck, maybe it's not even about memory training practice as such, but you're like, I want to remember that Ramus. I haven't even looked up yet how exactly you're supposed to pronounce the name Ramus or Ramus, Ramism or whatever. There's certain things I haven't memorized yet. But one thing that I can do when I want to memorize stuff from the book is, it's not like memory training as such, but 15, uh, 15 to 1572, I think, are his dates. And it's just that sort of thing. So 15, 15, 15, 72. Now, why did I choose that number out of my head? Well, it's just simply because when the dates came, I saw this image of this guy, and there's a tail banging his head on one side, and it's a tail of a specific dog, and then there's the band, the German krautrock band Can, right? And those help me remember the numbers 15 and 72. Now I'm kind of curious if I got that right, but and I'll be super embarrassed if not. But the whole point is that when you open the book and you start to read, sometimes you'll go through and you'll be like, oh, do I want to use these techniques right now? And you just got to push yourself to do it. So I think I just said 1515 to 1572, and I'm pretty sure that that's there. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. Let me put my finger here. 1515. Oh, this is tough. 1515 to 1572. So I don't even, I have to go back and watch the replay if I got that right. But that's part of the habit formation, is just to push yourself to use the techniques, right? And it could have been, it wasn't in this case, but I could have, and I do this often, is just like, remember the page number. And you just got to push yourself a little bit. And why do you want to memorize the page number? Well, maybe you're not making notes at that time. And you know that you really do need to go back to that page. So you just have your 00 to 99 or whatever you do to remember numbers, and you get it done, and you just push yourself to do it. But it's a habit. You have the tools, so just do it. So yeah, that's basically part of it. It doesn't have to be daily dedicated memory practice. It's also just that you have habits and routines for when you're reading, and that you actually use the techniques. So that's been really powerful for me, especially for like dates and facts and stuff. Even if you don't you haven't gone to Google yet, how are people pronouncing this name, or how are they using it, and how do you do that? Well, you just remember to do it, and then you go and do it, and you listen to different people pronounce the names, and then you can create images for that. But you don't let yourself get frustrated if your recall is slow. And if you make mistakes, you don't let yourself get frustrated. You just go back to what we were talking about before, and you treat it like a scientist, and you figure out how to improve, and because you've tracked it. So let's see here. What else do we have in our chats? If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world in the discussion, and then we will get rolling with you. There is a completely different energy that you carry as a teacher who is really living the practice. It's great to be exposed to. Thank you, Anthony. That's from Julie. Well, thank you, Julie. You people give me the energy, and I just hope that I can serve at the highest possible level and you know, one of the things that's so important is that in your memory practice that you also just have integrity to the practice. And one of the things that people often worry about is they worry about, like, are they going to be cheating on exams, right? And I get that. You'd be surprised how many times I get questions about that, and that can be like a little bit of a barrier. And I'm just like, no, be honest. It's just you're using memory techniques. That doesn't mean that you're not understanding. It doesn't mean that you don't have authentic knowledge. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I mean, if you look at this, I haven't read this whole book yet on this dude here who's become very interesting to me because of reading this. And by the way, here's a key tip. If you want to be a person of knowledge, read. Read the books that surround the books. Don't just read the core book, read the books that surround it, other key people who were around at the time and their sort of ideas and what was going on and so forth. But in any case, he was part of the formation of why our books are structured the way that they're structured and so forth. And it's really, really important to just dive in and surrender yourself to lots and lots of real, dedicated, living the practice through knowledge and remembering what it is, and being authentic about it. And the whole thing is you're not cheating, because the books that you're studying for were influenced by this guy who designed books in a way that we're still doing to this day, with the idea that that arrangement itself of knowledge as an object in space with indexes, with chapter headings and so forth. And again, I haven't finished reading this book, so I'm just putting some pieces together based on the introductions and the foreword. But the idea there is that the actual arrangement of information would help your memory and so forth. So you're not cheating if you're sitting in class and using memory techniques. You're actually doing part of the thing that they wanted you to do, was to remember. So back in the day being, the Renaissance and Elizabethan era and all that sort of stuff, the era that these dudes lived in, Bruno and Ramus and so forth, what they were working at was not just art of memory, ars memorativa, but also ars combinatoria. And what's ars combinatoria? Well, that's when you would see some information and you would just in your mind dial through a number of questions. Like, how big is this? How wide is it? How long is it? And what does it connect to? And so forth. And you would just run through 9 particular questions, and you would think about things that don't necessarily relate to that we would ask now these days, although we could, and we could come up with our own sets of questions. And I do have a program that does have some things about that in the self-improvement supercharger. There's an audio on how to think, and it gives you 18 of these things that you can run through in your mind. And it's about ars combinatoria and the art of combination. So yeah, you're never cheating. You're never cheating, and don't put limits on yourself at all. And then that way, in your own practice, when you don't know stuff, just say, well, I don't know, or I did look at that, but I didn't remember it quite as well as I could, or I forgot to use the memory techniques, or whatever. Just be honest about it, and you'll have a much more satisfying life in general. And also, it'll help prompt you to do better next time. And that's part of how you maintain a good, solid memory improvement practice, is that you are doing it with integrity to yourself. Not punishing yourself if you're not doing what you know you should be doing, but just being honest about it, looking at it straight in the face, and then asking yourself simple questions like, what can I do to get myself back on track? And that goes back to what we've already discussed, which is have the outcome, know your why, and outcome is more future, and why is now and the future, and then know how. What is it that's actually going to serve this? So back to the question here of from Grimrank about speed and of recall and so forth. How do you improve speed of recall? Well, you've got to look at your practice, and you've got to say, like, if the fat lady who sings does not pop into mind, the first question you would ask is, why is it not popping to mind? Is that the right solution? Is that the right character for that? Or if it's a foreign language phrase, and you're just like, oh, why is this Etienne word in, say, Chinese? Or why is it that I always forget to put the stress on mal in sigma in German, or whatever, right? Like, you just say, why? And then how can I correct it? What can I do to my imagery there? can I put it in a different memory palace and start fresh? Blah, 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 blah. Like you just start to ask yourself, why, how? And then when you say, well, maybe I need to now actually go and read the book again, right? That might help me. That might be the step that I need to take. And how do you read a book? Well, if it's a magnetic memory method book, you get out your memory journal, you take notes, and you draw memory palaces, and you really, really focus on the activities that get you the results, remembering that you study the techniques, you implement the techniques, and you practice the techniques with information that's going to improve your life. It's as simple as that. So that's the how part of how we maintain our practice. All right, Biker Mike is here. Wow, great name. Hello from San Diego. Oh, I just got invited to give a memory talk in San Diego. Having fun, but still slow getting imagery for my French studies. All right, well, let me know if you have specific questions around that. French is fun. What images are you having trouble with? What have you been doing so far? Are you using the magnetic memory method or just generally using imagery? It'd be good to know more about that. Having a great time here. Yeah, so let me look at this question I got here, or it's actually from a magnetic memory method student who says, thank you for checking up on my progress. About 4 years ago, I went through a program, and he's naming a competitor program, but I'll just, I don't want to name it specifically, although it's named here, but it's basically more closely based on what you'd find in this book. And went through the whole thing, obtained some results. However, the maintenance of all that I learned was both too boring and too great, so I ended up relapsing back to my normal memory techniques. The main problem I had with the maintenance was cognitive load imposed by joining disparate objects and doing a Russian doll sequence of stations. Of course, he's referring to me now, harp on the fact that you need that the magnetic stations of your memory palace should be automatic to make it easier to maintain what it is learned. So fast forward 4 years, and I looked into magnetic memory method, which I first saw on YouTube, and became interested in the magnetic memory method. To me, it takes the chore of remembering your stations in the memory palace away and leaves you to remember the words or concepts you want to remember in the first place, which is exactly why that even though I know a lot about Bruno, I don't teach Bruno, although I am going to make a course about it and show you what from Bruno to take and what to leave. Ultimately, it's up to you, right? Because I don't know what might work or not, but I'm going to give it from the magnetic memory method perspective, and I think it's really, really important to know some Bruno. But people want the 10 Commandments, they want the law, they want the system, and all that sort of stuff, and unfortunately, that's not realistic, and that's not how your brain works. It's not you. You're not a system, you're you, and you have your own memory, and you need to understand the methods and the principles of the memory techniques, and then you need just some guidance, perhaps, or you just are a total solo person on self-study, but whatever it is, you've got to really understand the foundations in order to make the practice and to create your own systems, rather than think and hope and pray that you're going to model someone else's systems. So I thought this was a really interesting email because and he goes into more detail about the training and why that it worked for him. And he said that he was learning French with 3,000 flashcards he wanted to memorize, and he obtained great results in his magnetic memory method memory palaces. And he's talking about the specific memory palaces, and he says he also cycles a lot to stay healthy and has numerous courses that he rides that are perfect for memory palace creation, and basically it goes into some details about how all that works, and really exciting. So there's more to come, but right now things are moving, and so there's some questions about strengthening the imagery and so forth. Thanks again for asking about my progress, and I have attached a memory palace drawing of my condo as an example of one of my memory palaces. I'll check in later regarding some challenges that I gave the students, as I don't want to get too wordy in this email. Well, by all means, please do get wordy in your emails. Wow, I'm going to open up this memory palace and have a look. Woo, look at this. That is very nice. Yeah, so, I mean, the way you get results from these techniques is you do them, right? And you do them authentically, not really basing it on a system, but understanding how you create your own systems. And PM Kiran is here. Oh, hello. Thank you for your nice post yesterday in the community tab here on YouTube. Really appreciate that. Just having a nice time with everybody. And oh man, this is a cool memory palace. Woo! Yeah, so if I haven't seen your memory palaces, please do send them along. This is one of the best I've seen. Yeah, this guy knows what he's doing. Cool. All right, so thank you everybody. If you're joining us live now, put something in the chat box there. Where are you in the world? What you doing? What you thinking? How you feeling? And if you have any questions, let me know. Go through a few more little emails here. We got something here, no name included, but thank you. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Oh, well, thank you for asking. I have made 10 memory palaces for 10 homes that I've lived in, taking a break now, and going to finish you studying your stuff before I go to the gym. All right, no question there. But anyway, I love little updates from people. Always great. And you don't have to ask a question. You can also just update me with what you're doing in your practice, which is always great. Well, let's see here. What else do we got? Well, I think I got so much email to catch up with you all. But if no one else has any questions or whatnot, thanks for hitting that thumbs up. Thanks for everybody who participated today. That was a lot of fun. And we're really looking forward to some things that are coming up. The website update is still ongoing. There's a few little things that need to fix, but enjoyed all the nice comments that everybody gave us for how the site is going a lot faster and looks cleaner and sharper. It's all about constant improvement, and this is how we maintain our habits. Is we don't go for perfectionism, we go for progressionism. We progress towards the life we want to have based on a solid memory, because the quality of your life is directly linked and related to the quality of your memory. What are you other than your memory? Well, there's one other thing you are other than your memory, and that is you, right? You are the only, you're really the only person that can be you. And so the more that you focus on improving that wonderful gift that you have, as fleeting as it is, as short a time that we have to see existence through the lens of the being that we are in this thing, this unit, you have a unit too through which you view the world. The more that you really focus on improving it and grasping it in all of its potential, no matter what the circumstances are, all these things that are going on, the laws, the wacko stuff on the news, whatever, all this stuff is going on. No matter what all those life circumstances are, you are viewing it through your unit, and you have the opportunity, either mentally or externally, through the people that you know or the actions that you take in the world, you have every opportunity to improve it within that context. There's no fairness in the world. There's no equality as such, and you can drive yourself bonkers trying to enforce equality on everything under the sun or whatever. But at the end of the day, the one thing that you control is this perception of whatever you see through the unit that you're in, if that makes sense. And so there's that, and then there's your memory. And the quality of those two things is what you have to control. And the more that you focus on improving the quality, not perfection, but progression towards better and better and better, the better things will be. And your memory is so huge to this, because one of the things that's so powerful to remember is that when you use your memory to remember the things that will improve your life situation, this unit that you're in, then your memory gets better, your life gets better, everything gets better. And all you have to do is study the techniques, implement the techniques, and practice the techniques with the information that actually will improve your life. And if you follow what we talked about today, if you missed the beginning, you can go back and watch the beginning of the show, or you can think of just these things: your outcome, your why, and how that you're going to do things. Everything is indicated right there. And if you have a memory journal and you're keeping track of all this, you're using the magnetic memory method, you're going to get very far, very fast. And just as I saw in this email that we went through today, the results are there. If you just abandon the hope and the wish for just some system that you're going to download like Neo into your brain, which is what some courses based on this try to tell you you can do, that's just going to lead to a lot of cognitive overwhelm, as Mike said in his email that we went through. You avoid cognitive overwhelm from these techniques by understanding the methods and the principles that underlie them and by creating your own systems. And they're not even systems. That's not the right word, because you're not a system. You're a being. You're an ecosystem, which is different than a system, right? You're dynamic. Things are shifting. They're changing. And you need to be able to observe those changes, which is why this is a science, right? You need to observe them clinically. You need to observe them without getting caught up in them passionately or emotionally or any of that stuff that constantly just leads to the boat rocking. You need to show up to them with clarity, crisp concern for the outcomes, the why you're doing it in the first place, and the how to do it, right? And so when you have a memory goal, when you have a real solid thing that you want to accomplish, learning a language, preparing for an exam, memorizing the names of every person that you meet, and so on, whatever those things would be, mathematical formulas, passwords, or whatever, so long as it improves your life. When you have that, then the how is revealed to you. Even if not every single step is revealed to you, at least the how is, right? And the how is to have a good, solid memory palace and to know how to create magnetic imagery and then to know how to do recall rehearsal through the memory palaces. And then you just need to do it one sip at a time. Study the techniques, implement the techniques, practice them with the information that's going to change your life. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you so much for helping spread the word by sharing these videos on this channel and going to magneticmemorymethod.com, and when you read a post that you like, hitting those share buttons so that people can find them. And whatever you do, whether it's just to pick up a language that you haven't studied for a while or start a new language or memorize the dates of a dude in a book when he was born, when he died, or whatever, dates of when wars started and ended, whatever you do, just use your mind because it's there, and make sure that it's information that improves your life, that makes you better at whoever you are and whatever you want to become, because you are always becoming whatever you will become, and you can get involved in that process, make better decisions, and having a better memory will help because you'll remember the information that is crucial to making those better decisions and getting better every single day with progression instead of perfectionism, because you're already perfect. Your memory is already perfect. You just need to method.com and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.